Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So today we are going to discuss about modulus in ES6. In this video, I will teach you how modulus work in ES6 and they are really helpful in project source code management. And also I will teach you how you can use them in your projects. So let's get started with the code writing. So here we are again on the index.js file. I'm going to commit this code and you can see here in the source folder we have all the coding files, but I'm just here on the index.js and I will write the same code which we done in the previous video of classes and objects. Like let's suppose I've created one class named car and then I inherit that logic in the model class. Right, this is class and I inherit this logic with the extend keyword in the model class and then I write the const my car is equal to I created object from this new model and here I am going to write Audi is one of my favorite cars and speed can say this and now my car dot show. So we have already discussed this line of code in the previous video of classes and objects. So you all know how this all is working. But you can see here we have multiple classes on the same page and they are doing multiple things. But when we work on the real-time projects, you all know um, in one class we can have a multiple methods and multiple properties and much more in that class. So we are not going to write the code in this way. So what I'm going to do, the first thing about the modulus is that modulus allow us to break up the code into separate files. So now we need to apply the ES modulus here approach. So we are going to break up the code in the separate files. So it can be more readable, more manageable. So let's create a new file here, uh, car.js. So here I will pass my code class and I'm going to separate this class as well as model.js, new file model.js, and here I'm going to pass this inherit code like this, right? So here I have applied the modulus ES6, but here you can see it generates an error keyword. So what is actually the error? So issue here is that when I write the car, which is okay, but it is not. This class is also using we are using in modulus class model.js, but I'm inheriting it, but I have not mentioned from where I'm inheriting it. So when in ES models are completely relying on two things which we need to remember. One is import and second is export statement. So I am not exporting my class car class to so I can use them somewhere in the other files as well as. So for modulus approach, I need to export this class if I need to import somewhere and use it. So I'm writing here export. So now I can use this car object because one thing also to remember for the ES6 and for the React, when we create the objects in the React or ES6, we need to make sure that by default these objects are private. We need to export them to use them in some other classes. So I need to use this here class object. So I will write import because if I need to use car, I need to import here and I will write car from. It seems okay. And from here I will write, you can see here car. And one thing we need to remember, we do not need to pass the .js here. It will by default get this car, right? So now you can see here the this is the right approach because first thing I pass the export here. That means I can use this private object somewhere in the application, and then I have used this object here because I need to inherit this class. So I use this in the curly braces. That means if I'm going to explain you for later on why I use the curly brackets. So I export this class, and here in the modulus class I can use it, but still I'm getting the error. That this is the error because I'm using this modulus class here, but I'm not exporting it. So for exporting, I just told you we need to write export here, and then now I can import this class. So import, you can see a model. Once I click here, it will by default get the address of this. So now you can see it is successfully running. So now you can see the Audi car speed is 399 kilometer per hour. So this is how the import and export statements are working. But we have a few more things than import and export. There is some standards which we need to remember. So I already told you we have two types of export. The one is named export and one is default export. So the right now the export I am using here for the class is name export. It is not default export. So let's suppose if I need to write the default export, I can write the default export. I'm giving you one example of name export as well as let's suppose I write export const hello world. So let's suppose if I come here and I write, so it's showing me the I can use more than one export method or export classes in any other class. So one thing you need to make sure if you need to export anything, you can write export keyword and the class or the method name. And that class, whenever you will call car.js somewhere, you can export there all the methods and classes or whatever the functions you create there, right? The second thing is that I just mentioned one thing. We have two types of exports. One is named export and one is default. So this is the name export example. Let's assume if I have the default export. So what I all need to do, export default. Yeah, so you can see here we write the two exports here. So now I'm exporting them in the curly braces, but this is the name export example. But now if I create that export default and I will write here, you can see the error, and error shows that imported as car was not found because possible exports. So because there's one is hello world, which is the name exports, the second is the default export. So one thing to remember, which is you can see a syntax of writing this. If you have the default export, you need to write this out of the curly bracket, right? So once you write it out of the curly bracket, it will accept this default exports and it will start working. But if you have the normal exports, then you need to write in the curly braces, right? And also there is also one also rule of thumb that you can only have one default export in one file, but you can have multiple exports in one file, but default is only one allowed. So I hope this you have understand this topic, default exports and imports, and how this export is working. I'm just doing a quick uh, review of all what we have done. We are importing this modulus class from model.js, and we are using it. Uh, in modern ES6 JavaScript, what we need to do, you need to import and export the statements if you need to use the private objects outside of their files, right? So I'm using this private class by default. They are private. They cannot be used outside of their classes. So I'm exporting it, and for using them, I'm using the import keyword and using that. Same likewise, here you can see I'm using the car but im importing the car, but I'm not using the same way we are using the model. The reason is that in the car class, I'm exporting it by default pattern. We have two patterns. One is named and second is default. So I hope that makes sense to you. Now you can see our code is much clearer and much easy to make changes and handle it. So thank you very much. In the next videos, I'm going to upload more topics on ES6, and also I'm going to start developing the React.js demos and exploring their components and objects and uh, states. So hope you're enjoying and doing practice day by day. Thank you.